I'm Deanna Bassett. I'm a student on Luther Seminary's campus, and I work in the corporate world as an accountant. So I was baptized in 1995 as a Christian, so in my 30s, by a pastor of a congregation in Ohio. And he set just a beautiful example for me of how to welcome people to the Lutheran Church. So when I became part of this Lutheran Church, the pastor imparted on me the fact that I belonged to this priesthood of all believers, and in a very Lutheran way showed me how my ministry in corporate America was very important. In fact, he said that I was able to do things that he couldn't do because I was functioning as an accountant in this big firm, and he couldn't work side by side with these people. And then he would ask me how business was going, and when I would tell him and give him examples, he would explain how I was imparting Jesus' presence into these corporate workrooms. I heard the call in this alpha session. I told the people in my small group. I immediately started looking for seminary campuses. My husband, he wasn't going to stop me. He was very supportive. Thanks be to God. Yes. And then I started taking classes, and I didn't declare my major when I took my first class because I wasn't sure what seminary was going to be like. So it took about 2 or 3 weeks for me to really decide I wanted to change my major and go for an MDiv degree to be a pastor one day. So I started looking around for seminaries, not knowing that in Minneapolis there was this huge resource called Luther Seminary. So I started looking in Ohio and Texas and a lot of other places for seminaries that might let me study there and travel back and forth on occasion, or have virtual classrooms. And somebody in my church at the time, one of the pastors that had graduated from Luther Seminary, said, "Oh, did you know Luther Seminary was in the area? And let me take you there and show you around." So I felt like that was, God calling me and really confirming, here it is, right? I'm giving it to you. I've received mixed responses when I tell people I'm going to seminary. I've had people, because I came from a Buddhist background, people not really knowing what seminary is and wondering if I was going to shave my head and live in a monastery, if this was part of the induction process. So I've explained it a lot of different ways, and eventually people realize that this is a reasonable call for me and actually point out how my gifts would contribute to being a good leader in the church. So that's been very helpful. As their first leader and a leader of several offices, 4 offices, they asked me to be their diversity inclusion regional leader. So I got to think about how to include women and different cultures and ethnicities together to have a more diversified and a more inclusive working environment. And it gave me the opportunity to really study. It gave me an opportunity to study how we work together, how we can be subjected to groupthink issues, and how we can break out of that. Also helped me learn about the barriers to what keeps people from being inclusive and what keeps people from looking for diversity, and helped me feel more like I was doing God's work in the workplace. Yeah, I feel like this is part of my calling. And one thing I also realize is that when I'm worshiping in a very diverse and inclusive environment, there is a fullness to that worship that I can't describe. Like you really feel the presence of the Holy Spirit, and the presence of Jesus. Because you may or may not even understand what some of the things that people are saying. Their accent might be too thick. They may be talking about things in their congregation that you don't have the history of to really fully understand what they're talking about. A lot of different things can be happening that you don't really understand, but you kind of do understand just from a perspective of a human being. I do. I believe my journey is different than other people's. That most people graduate in 4 years. I've been in seminary 10 years, and I'm still on this very slow path. I think the barriers maybe are traditional leaders who believe that there's this path you follow when you're passionate about being a Lutheran pastor. And I don't look like I'm following this path. And they question whether or not I really want to do this. They question why I would be on such a slow path if this is really what my heart desired. Yeah, I feel very hopeful about women's roles in ministry. I think they're becoming more widely accepted, maybe not in all churches, but in many churches. And I think that life is about what's possible, and there's a lot of possibilities, especially with God, when you think about that. So I think even in the last 20 years, that first congregation that baptized me, I think at that time, 20 years ago when I was baptized, they weren't ready for female leadership in that church. I think it's a lot different now when I go back to visit. I see a wider variety of even women involved in ministry. So instead of just one style, like more feminine leadership qualities, whether they come from men or women. And that offers me a lot of hope.
Wonderful.
I feel grateful for being involved, whether it's as a student or as a future Lutheran leader and a pastoral leader, or maybe just as a mom. Like, I just feel very fortunate to be part of this journey that I'm on, right? Raised Buddhist for the first half of my life, supported by my parents when I wanted to be part of a Christian community, loved by a Christian community, to the point where I wanted to be a leader in that community. I feel like extremely blessed by that. And I want to be able to emanate that, to give that to other people, to give that blessing, to give that, what I've received, to others, to have that kind of hope and joy in their life.